Dr. Jackson from Texas for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for our witnesses. Thank you for being here today. A lot of this has already been said, but I'm going to state it anyways because I do think it's important. But early on, COVID was a black box. No one really knew how infectious it was. We didn't know what the true morbidity and mortality of this disease was. No one knew who the truly vulnerable populations were. But we started pretty quickly to figure this out. And one thing that we learned very early on was that children were not the at-risk group in this disease. They didn't get COVID easily, they didn't spread it, and if they did get it, they did not get seriously ill and die from it, despite some of what we heard. We also knew that masking and school closures were having a devastating effect on social development, academic performance, and rise in youth depression and suicide. Despite that, there was no course correction. And the White House, Democrats at all levels of government, and the public health sector, which, by the way, has lost all credibility and trust of the American people at this particular point, all doubled down on these destructive policies. Why? Why were these decisions being made? Who was actually driving these bad decisions, you have to ask yourself. We know now that the teachers union, and specifically AFT and its president, Randy Weingarner, were aggressively pushing this destructive agenda. Why were they doing that, you ask yourself? Well, number one, in my opinion, is because there were billions of dollars at play here. Billions. Billions of dollars which would ultimately be controlled by the teachers union. Since 2020, Congress has actually allocated $190 billion to the schools. $7 million of that went to the teachers union. The intent of which, the $190 billion, was to reopen our schools and get back to normal. However, that did not happen, and the teachers union continued to support school closures. Liberal politicians continued to advocate for more money and support of the union. Why? And more money, more funding, more government money for this purpose. Well, I'll tell you why. It's because a large part of that money was going right into the re-election campaigns and the coffers of those very Democrats. In fact, the teachers union gave $20 million to Democrats in the 2020 election cycle alone. This, in my opinion, was the biggest driver of all of this. However, it didn't help at all that the teachers, administrators, and other school employees were being paid to stay home as well. And the teachers union was once again promoting this for political reasons, with complete disregard for the health and the well-being of our children. Some of this, a perfect example of this, recently published, this CDC reports, the CDC admitted that there were errors in their CDC reporting. These errors, they admit, resulted in exaggerating the severity and the risk for children. They also resulted in at the time in the continued CDC recommendations to keep kids at home. These recommendations, we now know, were developed in conjunction with the teachers union. This is politics, not science. Ms. Mazek, I wanted to ask you, are you a member of the teachers union?
I am not.
You're not?
National Association of School Nurses is a 501c3 member organization.
Thank you. You are the executive director of the National Association of School Nurses. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Were you the director in February of 2021?
I was.
Okay. And I know this question's been asked, but I think it's important. But I want to ask one more time. Were you consulted by the CDC or the White House or anyone else regarding recommendations for in-person learning?
The term consultation means that I really need to look at data and documents.
Did you get a phone call? Did you receive a letter? Do you remember having any conversations?
I received a
Not
letter
today,
today from
before,
the chairman asking for me to provide
I'm not talking
information
about that
from
today.
our
That's
association.
fine. I'd love to. We'll get that letter. We'd love to find that information out. What I'm asking is, at the time when these recommendations were being made, did you receive any phone calls? Did you get any letters? Did you have any communication with somebody at the White House or somebody at the CDC regarding in-person learning?
You're asking me to go by my memory. And
I'm asking you, you were the executive director. This is the organization that you were in charge of, and you can't remember if you had any type of conversation about that.
Sir, I will fulfill what the letter asks me for, and I ask that you would respect that.
I will be happy to look at that letter when we get it. I think it's very concerning that you can't remember, as the executive director, whether you had any type of conversation or any type of communication about that at all. I mean, I think you could easily say, I did, I don't know the detail, I don't know I can't relate to you the extent of which these conversations took place. I'll get that to you in writing, but you're saying you do not remember having any of those conversations.
No, I don't. What I do know is that the National Association of School Nurses depended on the guidance that was issued from the CDC.
I understand that. What I want to know is, did they participate in developing that guidance along with the teachers union? I think this is a very important question. I think that we're going to get to the end. This is just the beginning. We're just starting to scratch the surface of what happened here. When we see something that doesn't look like it's not right, you usually follow the money and you can figure out exactly why this stuff happened. So I'm excited about looking into this and finding out exactly what drove all of this, where that money went, and who made these decisions. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Thank you. I would now like to yield to Ranking Member Ruiz for a closing statement, if he would like to make one.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you again to all of our witnesses for your participation. It's clear in-person learning is critical to our children's health and well-being, both inside and outside the classroom.